So I hope everybody is able to hear me, right? If there is any problem at any point of time, please send me a message on WhatsApp or in the chat box. I will check. So today we are now going to discuss about the type of microscopy, which is called as phase contrast microscopy. So in this, as the name indicates, there will be some contrasting mechanism which is used. So things which cannot be normally seen with the usual light microscopy, to visualize those kind of objects, we make use of phase contrast microscopy. In 1934, the Dutch physicist called Fritz Zernike, he was the one who described this phase contrast microscopy for the first time.
Hello.
Everybody please mute. Okay. So what is the principle of this phase contrast microscopy? As the light, it hits the cells, the organism cells, and it passes through them, it will undergo small kind of shift in phase. Now that phase shift is not visible to our naked eyes, but the microscope, contrast microscope, is able to, the phase contrast microscope is able to visualize these things. And that appears as a difference in the contrast of the images. So there are two ways in which we can increase this image contrast. So when you have better contrast of images, your visibility improves. So the first way to increase the contrast is by generating constructive interference between the scattered and background rays in the region of the field. And the second is by reducing the amount of background light which reaches the image plane. So some microscopes use method A and some microscopes use method B. So in this instrument which we are using, it is just the normal light microscope itself, but there is an extra part which is attached there. That is called as, there are two parts, annular phase plate and annular diaphragm. So these are the two parts which are different as compared to the usual microscope. And a microscope which has these two extra parts, it is called as a phase contrast microscope. So if you look at the diagram of that, there are different kinds of positions that are possible. You can use this microscope to have bright field microscopy. You can use it for dark field microscopy. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, different types of positions are available. And the phase contrast objective lenses are additionally provided in this microscope. Now, if you look at the image which is produced, if you look at this diagram, are you able to see this diagram here, the picture? So on the left side, on your left side, what you see is a image which is produced in the normal kind of microscopic method, the bright field microscopy. And if you look at the same image with phase contrast illumination, with phase contrast microscopy, it appears like the image on the right side. So this is the same organism. When we view it under light microscopy or bright field microscopy, that pale image which is on the left side. And if you see it under phase contrast, you are able to see it with that fluorescent, that bright kind of lighting. So if you compare the two pictures, you can make out that more details are visible in phase contrast microscopy. Some things you can see in bright field microscopy, but many things are not very clear. Like if you look at this part in the center here, there's a small, in the image on the right side, there is one round kind of thing here, which you cannot see here. Certain other structures also are very clear in the phase contrast microscopy. They are not so clear in the bright field microscope. So this is how we make use of phase contrast microscopy. So where all is it used? It is used for visualization of living and unstained cells. Without doing staining, you can visualize the cell. If you want to observe the organelles within the cell, like the mitochondria, the nucleus, the vacuoles, and so on, we can use this microscopy. If you want to follow certain cellular events which are taking place, some processes which are going on, like cell division or phagocytosis and so on, we can use phase contrast microscopy to study those events. Then if we want to check the movements of the cell, movements of the chromosomes, movements of flagella, for this also we can use phase contrast microscopy. If you want to just observe the living microbial cells and you want to see how they are growing, what is their process of growth, then also we can use this. And for study of membrane permeability, Is the membrane allowing certain materials to diffuse inside? Is it allowing materials to move out of the cell? So that study of membrane permeability. For all these things, we can make use of phase contrast microscopy. Coming to the advantages of this method, that you don't need to stain. Even without doing the staining procedure, we can get clear images. If you remember, there are different types of staining that we can follow. We can have simple staining in which we can have positive staining or negative staining. Or we can make use of gram staining. Or we can make use of acid-fast staining. But in all those procedures, there is one extra step of staining. But if you want to get a clear image without doing any staining procedure, then we can make use of this phase contrast microscopy. Now, the advantage is that it gives high contrast images. And because you are not doing any chemical preparation or staining procedure, there is no damage to the cells. If you remember when we talked about staining mechanisms, we said that all the cells which undergo the staining process, they will have some damage or they will die in that process of staining. So you can't study living cells by doing staining. But if you want to study living cells and you want to make sure that there is no damage to the cells, then we can make use of this phase contrast microscopy. We are not doing staining. We are not doing fixation. We are not doing any chemical change to the organisms. The only thing is different is the way the microscope is arranged and the kind of parts which the microscope has. So it allows us to do prolonged observation of living cells. For a long time, if you want to observe the living cells, that is possible using phase contrast microscopy. And it has a wide range of applications. Now, what are the disadvantages of this method? First thing is to give that phase contrast, to give the contrast between the phases, you require a larger amount of light. Greater amount of light is required. Another thing that is noticed is generally there will be one bright halo, something like a bright light which is produced around the image. Because of that, it is difficult to always say that to guarantee that you will get a good kind of image. Then they have observed that it is effective more to observe individual cells. If you have multiple cells which you are trying to observe, it is difficult to do that with phase contrast microscopy. But for individual cells, it is effective. And then definitely because we said extra parts have to be fitted to the light microscope and so on, it is more expensive than the light microscopy. So these are some of the disadvantages of this method. Now we come to another technique of microscopy, which is called as dark field microscopy. So if you remember in the usual microscope, when you observe and see, what we are finding is that the background is bright and our object is colored or our object appears dark, correct? So that is normal field microscopy. When we say dark field microscopy, as the name indicates, the field, the background will be dark. And because of that, your object will appear bright. So that is the principle in dark field microscopy. So we are using some illumination technique. The lighting is done in such a way that you are able to see objects clearly. So light is used to illuminate the sample. The light is not collected by the objective lens. And because the light is not collected by objective lens, the background appears black in color and the object will appear bright. The sample which you are studying, the cell which you are studying will appear bright. Now here, the lenses which we are using in dark field microscopy are same as light microscopy, but the difference is in the condenser. So because there's a special type of condenser which is used, the background appears dark in color. It directs that light in an oblique manner, in a slanting manner, so that the light moves away from your sample and that sample appears bright, background appears dark. Because the background is dark, it is called as dark field microscopy. Now, where do we have usage of this dark field microscopy? We use it to view the bacteria, algae, and blood cells. If there are some bacteria which are very thin, which cannot be seen under normal light microscope, then we use dark field microscopy for that. Because these thin bacteria, the contrast is better in case of dark field microscopy. Then in metals, if you have some metallic component which you are going to use to build some bridge or to build some building or things like that, sometimes there will be what are called as hairline fractures. I think you have heard of hairline fracture in human bones, right? When there is a tiny crack or something very thin, it is called as a hairline fracture. Like that, in metal objects also, we can have fractures. So if we want to see those kind of hairline fractures, then we make use of dark field microscopy. In the medical field, we use dark field microscopy mainly for diagnosis of syphilis. As you know, syphilis is a condition where there is this organism called Treponema pallidum. And if you have sample which is collected from a patient, and that sample you want to check and see whether there is Treponema pallidum organisms, then we can use that to diagnose syphilis. Just 1 minute, please. So we can use this dark field microscopy to diagnose syphilis by observing Treponema pallidum organisms. Then it is also used often to study the motility. Motility means movement. If you have flagellated bacteria with flagella, or you have protozoa and you want to study the movement of these organisms, then we can make use of dark field microscopy. The advantages of this method are that it is quite simple, but it is very effective. It can be used for marine organisms like algae, plankton and all. It is the ideal method for their study. And if you want to study external details of the cells, then you can use this method. The disadvantage is that because the background is dark, the level of light is very low. So you can't see the things very clearly sometimes. Then we said that the background is going to be dark, but the object will be having strong lighting. So if you are going to illuminate, if you are going to light up that sample, then that sample may get damaged because of that excessive light which is falling on the sample. And thirdly, they have observed that sometimes there will be distortion of the images which are seen in dark field microscopy. Now we come to the third method, which is electron microscopy. So as you know, there are certain objects which are very, very, very small and we can't see them even using normal light microscope. So in that case, we have to use what is called as electron microscopy. The wavelength of light in this is about 1 lakh times shorter than the wavelength of visible light. So because of that, it has better resolution compared to the light microscope. It has better magnification. So we can see So we can see even the tiniest of objects with clarity in this electron microscope method. So here what we do is, normally in light microscopy, dark field microscopy and all, the light is used as the source of illumination, the visible light which we are having. Here, in case of electron microscopy, the difference is that we are using a beam of accelerated electrons as the light source. So electrons are generated, they are moving very fast, and those accelerated, fast moving electrons are used as the illumination source. So the principle of this is that you generate a stream of electrons. You accelerate a focused stream of electrons in a vacuum towards the sample. Because of that, what will happen is there will be interaction between the electron beam and the sample, and that interaction between electron beam and sample forms the image. So in optical microscope, in normal light microscope, the light is interacting with the sample to create image. Here, the interaction is between electron beam and sample to create the image. So that image which is produced, it will give us all kinds of details of the surface of the sample or the internal composition of the sample based on what you want. Do you want to see the surface of the cells in the microscope, or you want to see what is inside the microscope? So based on what type of electron microscope you are using, you can study different parts of the cell, either the surface itself, or you can go deeper inside and see the internal composition. So this is a picture of an electron microscope. So if you compare this with our normal laboratory microscope, you can easily make out what is the difference, right? Our laboratory microscopes are so tiny, we can keep them on our table and we can work. This needs a room for itself, and it has to be connected with a computer setup and all that to be able to then print out the images. So this is a diagram of an electron microscope. So what is the principle of this? There is something called as an electron gun. So that electron gun, it will generate the electrons. Once the electrons are generated, there is an accelerating voltage which is applied. So when that voltage is applied to those electrons, they start moving and they move very rapidly. Now, these electrons are moving in the form of a beam, but they are moving here and there. So in order to focus them on the object which we want to see, to focus them on the cell which we want to observe, there are two sets of condenser lenses. So these two sets of condenser lenses, they will focus the electron beam on the specimen. Now, if we want to use electron microscopy, one important requirement is that the specimen which we are going to observe should be very thin. And how thin it should be? 20 to 100 nanometers. That should be the thickness of that specimen, the cells which you are going to see. So when the electron beam, now you know that electron beam is coming, electrons have been generated, voltage has been applied, so they get accelerated. There are two sets of condenser lenses. They are going to focus that electron beam on the specimen. Now the electron beam passes through the specimen. When it passes through that specimen, the electrons will get scattered based on what is the density of the part of the specimen where they pass through. If some part of the specimen is more dense, then there is more scattering of electrons. So that region appears dark in color. If there is a part of the specimen, part of the cell where there is less density, then the scattering of electrons is less in that area. So that area appears very bright. So this is what appears in the image. The electrons have been generated. They are accelerating and passing through the specimen. When they pass through specimen, they will get scattered based on the density of that specimen. Some part which is more dense, more scattering of electron, that part appears dark in color. Some part of the specimen is less density it is having, less electron scattering happen, so they appear brighter in color. And then the electron beam comes out from the specimen, it passes to the objective lens, and then the magnified image is formed. So what are the applications of this? If you want to study ultrastructure, the very detailed fine structure for microorganisms, different kinds of cells in the body, large molecules, biopsy samples, metals, crystals, for all this we use electron microscopy. You know that ultrastructure means you magnify the structure to a very high level and you study that in great detail. So that is called ultrastructure, and to study that, we cannot use our normal light microscopy or our dark field phase contrast microscope. Then we have to go for electron microscope. In some industries, they use this technique to help with the quality control test. It can also be used for particle analysis. It can be used to study the mechanism of disease because it can study the different types of cells, like especially in diseases like cancer, where you have cells which have become abnormal. So to study the mechanism of those diseases, we can use electron microscopy. To determine the structure of proteins also, they make use of electron microscope. The advantages of this method is that it provides a very high magnification. There is a lot of high resolution. And because of this, there is no distortion in the images. You can study depth of the cells and you can apply it to many different fields. But the disadvantage, if you are going to direct and hit electrons on the specimen, obviously that specimen is not going to be alive. It will die. It will get damaged. So you cannot observe live specimens using electron microscopy. And the penetration power of that electron beam is low. It cannot really penetrate very thick samples. So it is important that your specimens should be very thin. As we said before, the specimen should be 20 to 100 nanometers thickness. Only that much thin your specimen should be. Then you can get a good image. And because we are using vacuum here, at the time where we are accelerating the electrons, we are using vacuum. So if vacuum is used, then it is important that your specimen should be completely dry. If there is wetness in your specimen, then you will not get correct images. And obviously, this method is very expensive because, as we saw, the instrument itself is so big and complicated. To build that instrument takes so much time and effort and money. So the instrument is expensive. Then everybody can't use that microscope, isn't it? Now, the light microscope which we are using in the laboratory, you can easily teach somebody to use it and they can very easily learn how to use that. But this functioning of electron microscope is complicated. So you need to have highly skilled technicians to train them. They should have studied something. They should be educated. And to train them also, it requires effort and time. So this overall electron microscopy is an expensive method of microscopy. Okay. Now, when we are saying electron microscopy, we have just said generally electron microscopy. In that electron microscopy, there are 4 different types which are there. You have what is called as analytical electron microscopy or AEM. The second type is called scanning transmission electron microscopy, or it is called as STEM. Then we have scanning electron microscopy or SEM, and we have transmission electron microscopy, which is called TEM. So these 2 methods, the third and fourth method, SEM and TEM, sometimes they will say SEM or they will say TEM. So this SEM and TEM, these are the most common methods which are used in pharmacy and in microbiology related to the pharmacy field. So even when people are, in subjects like pharmaceutics and all, when they want to, you must have heard nowadays, there's a lot of research work going on regarding nanoparticles and all that. So when they prepare nanoparticles are very tiny particles in that nanometer range, they have the size. So to study all those also, they make use of this SEM and TEM techniques. So these from our point of view, from our syllabus point of view, from our exam point of view also, this scanning electron microscopy and transmission electron microscopy, these are the 2 important methods for us. So we will focus and learn more about those 2 methods. So first we will take up this SEM. It is scanning electron microscopy is the technique. Scanning electron microscope is the method. It's an instrument that we are using. So what is this scanning electron microscope? It is a kind of electron microscope which uses a fine beam of focused electron to scan the surface of the sample. That is what we need to pay attention to. So whether it is SEM or TEM, there is beam of focused electrons only which we are using. But what is the purpose? In SEM, we are using it to scan the surface of the sample. Now, in this method, the microscope will record information about what is happening, what is the interaction taking place between the electrons and the sample. And that gives us a magnified image. Now, in this technique, the magnification is up to 2 million times. And when we use this SEM technique, we get insight about the sample's topography. Topography means the surface composition. And also we come to know about its elemental composition, right? And SEM is able to capture 3D images. They are black and white images. They are not colored. So whether you have thin or thick samples, it can deal with them and it will give you 3-dimensional black and white images. Now, the next thing is we use, this is the diagram of how a scanning electron microscope is arranged. So on top, there is a source of electrons. Then you have an anode. Okay. Then we have the condenser lenses. So if you see, the electron source is giving out that triangle-like thing. So electrons are coming out at different areas. Then using that anode and using the condenser lenses, it is focused to fall in the center. So it is like a beam of electrons which is focused and passing through. Then it will pass through the objective lens. Then there will be an electron detector which is there. And here down at the end, you have the sample. So that sample, on that, a thin beam of the electrons is falling. If you observe this yellow thing which is coming, it is the rays of electrons. It is the beam of electrons which are coming. So at the top where they are generated, the beam is very broad. But by the time it reaches the sample, there is a thin beam of electrons which is falling on the sample. And those pink colored arrows which you can see, which are moving in the backward direction, those are the scattered electrons. So there are two things here. On one side, you have the X-ray detector, and the other side, you have the secondary electron detector. So together, all these things, they are checking and they are seeing what is the density in those sample things. And because of that, we get the final image which we can see. Next is TEM, transmission electron microscopy. The microscope is transmission electron microscope. So here we use a broad beam of electrons. And because of that, we get the image of the internal structure of the sample. So if you remember in SEM, we said we are using narrow beam of electrons and we are studying the surface of the cell. In TEM, we are using broad beam of electrons and we are studying the internal structure of the cell. So this beam of electrons is transmitted through the sample, and because of that you get an image which tells you about the morphology, the composition, the crystal structure. And here the samples must be less than 150 nanometers thick to allow the electrons to pass through them. After the electrons get transmitted, in that case, in the case of SEM, we said that electrons are falling on sample, but they are moving backward, they are scattered. Here, we are not bothered about the scattering, we are seeing the transmission through the sample. And therefore, the detector is below the sample. So the electrons get transmitted based on the density of the sample, there will be less transmission or more transmission. And the image which is produced in the case of TEM is a two-dimensional image. So we have a 2D image which is created. In SEM, we said 3D image is created. Here we are saying 2D image is created. Now the magnification in the TEM is 10 to 50 million times. And at the atomic level also, we can see the details. So among all the types of electron microscopy, the greatest resolution, the greatest amount of details we can see in this TEM. So whenever you want to study molecular and cellular structures, we use transmission electron microscopy technique. So if you look here, just like SEM, electron source is there, anode is there, condenser lenses are there, okay? Then you have the objective lens, you have an intermediate lens, you have a projector lens, and finally you have the screen. So this is about TEM. There are some similarities and there are some differences. So what are the similarities? In both of them, we are using electron gun to emit the electrons. Then we are using vacuum. So through the vacuum, the electrons will flow. Then there are lenses and there are electron apertures so that you can control the flow of the electron beam and so that you can capture the images. Okay. So these are the similarities. But what is the difference? How they work, the type of sample which is required, what do they show us, and what is the resolution? That is different. Okay. So this advantages and disadvantages, you can look into it in the notes. It is there. Biological applications also you can study there. Just to sum up these differences. So scanning electron microscope is based on scattered electrons, whereas in electrons, in TEM, we are basing it on transmitted electrons. So SEM gives us detailed image of the surface of the cells, whereas TEM gives us information about the internal composition of the cells. In case of SEM, we have to coat the sample with a thin layer of heavy metal like gold or palladium. But here in TEM, we are not doing any such coating, but you should have thinner samples because the electron cannot penetrate very far. The SEM will give you resolution to as close as 20 nanometers, whereas TEM will give you higher resolution near 1 nanometer. Magnifying power of SEM is 50,000 times, 50,000x. Magnifying power of TEM is up to 2 million times. Using SEM, you can analyze large amount of sample at a time. With TEM, you can analyze only a small amount of sample at a time. Okay. So when the image is formed, the 3D picture, 3-dimensional image is formed in SEM. And in case of TEM, we get a 2-dimensional structure. So what are the uses of that? That is also given. You can use SEM for wherever you want to study the topography, the surface and the composition of the surface. In case of TEM, we study the interior of the cells. That is the major difference. So now I've just got some images here of how it appears. If you look at this on your left side and in the middle and in the right side. So this left image is what you will see if you are using just a normal light microscope. You will see the cells like this. When you look at those same cells under TEM, you will see them like this. So this is an example of a budding yeast cell. When yeast cells are undergoing budding process, what is happening there? That is what we are able to see here. So in the TEM image, you will see like this. In the SEM image, it will appear like this. Can you make out the difference between what is the level of visibility? In the compound microscope, you just saw some round things there. You could see some attachment is there between some of them. When you look at the SEM image, we are only seeing outside what is happening. Only external you can see. But the inside is all opaque. You can't see that. But in the TEM image, you can see inside those yeast cells also, what are the structures which are there, what is the process that is happening. Similarly, if you look at E. coli bacteria, when you look under compound microscope, normal light microscope, if you see the image, you will just see some red, pinkish red kind of cells here. You can't make out anything more. If you look at the SEM image, which is on the extreme right, then you can see some capsule-like things. You can't see anything what is inside them. You can just see the external structure. But if you look at this middle image, which is the TEM image, then you can see inside those cells also some kinds of structures which are present. So the depth is more in case of TEM. Surface image is given by SEM. And both these are definitely giving us better resolution and more information as compared to normal microscope. Same way here, if they took samples of pollen grains. You know what are pollen grains, I hope. So these pollen grains, when you see them under SEM, that is the left side image, and when you see them under TEM, that is the right side image. So you can make out here. In the SEM, scanning electron microscope image on the left side, you can see details of what all is there on the surface of that pollen grain. Can you make out that? There are some spiky-like things. There are some benzene ring-like structures. There are some dotted areas. There are some fissures there. All that what is happening on the surface of the pollen grain, we can see by using SEM. But in that method, we are not able to see what is inside the cell. So if you do transmission electron microscope TEM method, that image on the right side, in that you are now able to see what are all present, what structures are present inside the pollen grain. You can see something like a nucleus, you can see something like some vacuoles, you can see different kinds of structures which are there inside. So that is the level of detail that we are getting. So that is why scanning electron microscopy is only for surface observation. Transmission electron microscopy is for internal composition. Okay. So I would suggest that when you are studying this topic, you study it like this with the differences between both of them. That way you can remember the differences, and mostly they ask this for 5 marks and they will ask any one technique. So you should know the diagram of it and you should know the factors. So if you study it in terms of differences, whichever one they are asking you can write about that one particular part. They never have so far asked differentiate between the two. But when you are studying, if you are studying the differences, it becomes easier for you to remember about each of those. Okay, so then you just need to write down whatever you have studied. Here, this coronavirus, which was there, you can see the top one is the SEM image. Okay, you can see that the cells are the blue and pink colored things are the cells. And from that, you can see the virus coming out of that cell, the yellow color. So here you are not able to make out anything what is inside that coronavirus, but you can only see the overall virus structure. In this lower image, it is a TEM image of that same coronavirus. So you can see what actually is kind of the structures which are inside those virus cells also. So that is the kind of difference in images between SEM and TEM. Okay, so this is all that I had to tell in this class. Anyway, we have run out of time also. So I will stop here for now. And in the next class, which is in the evening, in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, we will continue and take up more things. So I can see that Amit Gowda is present. Anirban, Anjali Devi, Arvind, Bhagyalakshmi, Chandana, Chiranjeevi, Devika, Dhananjay, Dimple, Gunashri, Hemant, Kavita, Kavya, Kirtana, Ishan, Kokila, Crispy, Lokesh, Mohammad Amanullah, Moham, Navya, Nikit, Pavan K, Prajukta, Ramya, Riya, Sana, Shambhu. Who's Shambhu? Sorry. Shambhulinga, okay. Shilpa, Shreya, Stephen, Tasmia, Varshini,